Okay, so it's 11:01 and we're going to start. So I just want to say hello to everybody. It's great to see kind of the whole range of wonderful educators and committed advocates for students who are learning English. I also want to welcome Darren Nielsen, who's the Assistant Superintendent of Assessment. We have people from Iron County and from Weber and from Canyons and Granite and, as well as committee members from the Access Committee that actually are consultants to the state board. So I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for being on today. And of course, Alex, who is our host, who's been really wonderful in every possible way. This is recorded and will also be uploaded into the link, which I hope you all have subscribed to. It's a new playlist called Supporting Students Learning English. And Jerry Record set that up for us. So I'll send the link out again with that, as well as the link when this is uploaded to our playlist. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Specifically, I want to thank Anne Michelle Neal, who works with the accountability systems, as well as Megan Lopez, who supports us in all kinds of different ways. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to go through the presentation in relationship to, the WIDA screener and the implications for what happens when we do placement. And Megan is going to actually monitor the chat function. So if you have questions, you should put them in the chat function. Make sure that you're muted if you end up being a little forgetful, because it happens oftentimes. Alex will mute you because he's the host. And then Megan will kind of look for patterns. And at the very end, actually have a conversation about some of the issues that came up in the chat. So again, thanks to all of you for being here, and I hope you're staying safe and healthy, because our students really need us to be at the top of our game and be huge advocates for their learning in this kind of situation that we're in with the pandemic. So thank you all very much for being here.
All right, thank you, Christelle, and thank you for allowing us this opportunity to all get together. It has been entirely too long since we've all been able to meet virtually or in any kind of capacity, so it's so fun to see so many of these names popping up on the list. Again, please, if you have any questions, throw those into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring them. If it's absolutely pertinent to the moment, I might jump in here or there if it's appropriate for Anne Michelle to answer at the moment. Otherwise, I'll be kind of compiling them all, and we'll be answering most of those at the end. We'll be unmuting you and giving you some time to really get into any wonderings and questions that you may have. So again, really quickly, introductions. I am Megan Lopez from the Utah State Board of Education. Like many of you, Anne Michelle and I, and Christelle, we all wear many hats. So Anne Michelle and I are, I call her my WIDA wife. We are partners together in all things WIDA, and we just have so much fun. And we adore everything WIDA has to offer, and we're so happy to be able to bring it to you. I am also the Secondary English Language Arts Assessment Specialist, and newly our state's legislated Assessment to Achievement Program Manager. So it's been a fun, busy summer, to say the least. I'm going to give Anne Michelle really quick an opportunity to introduce herself.
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Megan. I'm Anne Michelle Neal, also from the Utah State Board of Education. I also work in the assessment department at USBE, working with WIDA assessment, and also I'm the state accountability specialist and work closely with the school report card and those kinds of things as well. Just as Megan said, happy to see you all, and I'm glad to be here and to present this information to you.
And please note that at the very end, we will have our contact information for you all. We put our email out there for you all to contact us anytime you have questions. We want you to have our email. Please don't ever feel like you need to apologize. I always get apologies of Megan, I'm so sorry. I've been blowing up your inbox, and I just have to say, never apologize. That's what we're here for, is to support you all in your work, because you truly are the ones that are making it all happen. So don't hesitate to contact us. So before we get into the remote screener, we wanted to let you know about a couple of other updates concerning WIDA. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to actually let Anne Michelle speak to this really quickly, unless we cover it. Sorry.
I'm happy to. And I'm going to also invite Darren Nielsen to add any comments that he would like to as well. WIDA access has been removed from the parental opt-out, formerly the parental exclusion form, as of 2020-2021. This is approved by the board in May. As you know, federal Title III requires that students be given the annual ELP assessment. Students can opt out of services, but they cannot opt out of the assessment. So we were able to work with the board to align that federal requirement with our state parental exclusion requirement or allowances or provisions that keeps us and all of you in compliance with Title III and helps support students taking that exam annually to inform their instruction. Any comments from Christelle or from Darren?
Yes, I'm going to say that the issue is really not about compliance. And yes, it does comply with federal regulations in relationship to two specific things. One is the ability to monitor students toward English proficiency, which is on the report card, as most of us know. So if you have students not taking the assessment, you know, it's pretty difficult to monitor them and then provide the kind of support that's necessary so that they have equitable access to not only grade level content, but to equal educational opportunities, because we know that the gap between what English learners have access to and their English speaking peers and some of the barriers that are related to that is very severe. And I just want to thank Darren Nielsen. He was eloquent with the board when many objections came up about keeping WIDA access on the opt-out form. So Darren, if you want to say anything, I just want to tell you how much I appreciated your support, especially when I try to explain the necessity of adapting instruction based on important assessment information for each individual student, which Anne Michelle has designed, and the assessment department has done so adequately in relationship to the data gateway and individual student reports with longitudinal data on speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So Darren, if you want to add anything, help people understand the context, that'd be great too. Yeah,
thank you, Dr. Estrada and Anne Michelle, for your discussion about this topic. You know, as everyone on this call, I think, understands, the WIDA assessment is really a unique, and it's a different type of assessment than what a lot of our individuals who consider statewide assessments would view. And I think, Dr. Estrada, you at the end of your comments there really highlighted the importance of, you know, the fact that a student takes an assessment is only part of the scenario. The real important part is that the results of those assessments, in this case the WIDA assessment, is used to personalize their instructional program. And in our settings where that's where that can be really challenging, again, the results, it's important that in our schools that our teachers receive the reports for the students that they're providing instruction to, their WIDA reports, and also receive support and training on how to scaffold their instruction so it's accessible to the students regardless of what level of proficiency the student has at the current time in their English language proficiency. So again, we're excited that that this assessment has been removed from the parental opt-out form because of the perception that it gave that this assessment was equal in many ways to other state assessments, whereas we made the case that it's not. That our students' civil rights, really the case that we made is that our students' civil rights are dependent, their ability to receive appropriate educational opportunities and services is really dependent on our schools' knowledge of what level of proficiency they have with English language and speaking. And so we're hopeful, again, as we continue to make progress, we have our students learning English have significant needs in the state of Utah, and we've got a lot of opportunities for improvement in our ability to meet those needs. We're hopeful that this is just a small step in the path to making those improvements, and that, again, we'll be able to provide continued support in our teachers having access to those reports and understanding how to use those to provide instructional services that are accessible by their students. So again, thank you. And thank you to all of you who are joining us from the field. It's challenging work, but it's very rewarding. And it's very important for so many of our individual students across the state that we improve our ability to give them access to our college and career readiness standards. So thank you.
Thank you, Darren. We really appreciate all the work you did to make that come to fruition, and Christelle and Anne Michelle, and wow. Okay, so I don't see any questions except for lots of things. So all right, I'm not going to go through this whole slide because there's quite a bit. And Christelle, can you confirm if they will be sent this updated version of the PowerPoint? We'll make sure that it does get sent out to you. Okay, so there are, every year we have to update the technology. So this slide is going to provide you with the new technology resources and updates that are available. Everything is always available in WIDA AMS, but please make sure that this information gets out to the appropriate technology coordinators in your LEAs to make sure that we can keep moving forward with our WIDA screening and access. So there are links in there. Please, if you have any questions, you can contact myself, or at the bottom, you can also see contact information for DRC's customer service. And I will say they have excellent customer service in walking you through all of the technology components. So next slide, and then I will answer a quick question. Another technology related update is this weekend. Hopefully this will not affect you and you are all taking the weekend off, but there is a planned outage for WIDA AMS, so the DRC side, and that will be happening Saturday to Sunday. So just be aware it will be offline for routine maintenance. And then really quickly to step back to our previous discussion, we have a question in the chat saying, do the students still have the option to opt out of the ELD instruction? And yes. So no longer the option to opt out of the assessment, but yes, they can still opt out of services and instruction. All right. Next slide, please. So yesterday I had the opportunity to send an update, and I hope that you all got that. We wanted you to have it as soon as possible. So this year, all of our trainings that we normally would have in person for our WIDA test administration, we cannot do that due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot do that in person because WIDA has decided that they are not going to do any in-person trainings. They will do all virtual trainings this year. So we had to kind of do a mad scramble between WIDA and USBE to make sure that we can get these nailed down and still available to all of you. So do be aware that we do now have those dates nailed down, and I sent those out again, and I apologize that it's not in this this presentation, but hopefully you did already receive it in my email. So they are coming up soon. Registration is through Midas, and because it's virtual, we're offering them at different times to hopefully be a little more flexible with your schedules, and more people can attend than was allowed in the past, just to make this more accessible and hopefully helpful for you as you prepare to start administering screeners, and then in December, the WIDA access test. So WIDA trainers will be on, ready to answer your questions and walk you through test administration if you are new to the process. In relation to more just resources for you, WIDA has posted their Q&A webinar schedule on the secure portal. And remember, if you need a secure portal account, please contact us anytime so we can get you set up with the proper accounts so you can access all of this. So all the Q&A webinars that will be available this year are now posted. And I believe we already had one take place this week, which was on now the next slide. So this one already took place. However, if you did miss this Q&A webinar related to the Access Speaking domain, it is recorded and it has been posted to the WIDA Secure Portal. And so just remember, if ever you can't make it to the live trainings and Q&A webinars, they're always going to be recorded and posted to the download library as well. All right, and those are our short, quick updates. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Anne Michelle, and I'm going to really be monitoring the chat. I'll mute myself. Anne Michelle, if anything pops up that needs to be answered right then, I'll let you know. Otherwise, we'll get into our main core of what we're here today to learn about.
Okay, is my volume all right? Okay. I'm really excited to talk to you today about the WIDA remote screener. This, I think, is a pretty impressive feat. Remote administration for assessment is something that is on the minds of many people nationally, and WIDA has been able to, I think, accomplish a pretty large lift in providing remote screener in a timely way and for the conditions that we're currently experiencing. I'm going to share a little bit about the direction from the U.S. Department of Education, and then share some details about the remote screener to help you develop a plan for your LEA, and kind of give you a bit of insight into screener and some resources. So as Christelle shared with you in May, the U.S. Department of Education really released a fact sheet about providing services to English learners during COVID-19. This is a direct quote about administering assessments that, and especially newly enrolled students, that recognizing that schools are physically closed in some cases, students are continuing to register, but unlike content assessments that we saw in the spring, schools are required to identify ELs to the greatest extent possible. A link to that fact sheet is here in the slides. But the purpose of Remote Screener is to help you to accomplish this task of identifying English learners so that they can be given services. As you know, typically ESEA requires that students are screened within 30 days of enrollment if they enroll at the beginning of the year. However, we are in unique circumstances where many schools are physically closed, including those for registration and screening. Two things that I pulled directly from that fact sheet are, as I mentioned, if you are continuing to enroll new students, you should attempt to identify ELs remotely to the greatest extent possible. For example, the LEA's online registration process could include the home language survey, and that would trigger the screener, and the LEA may be able to conduct a version of its screening assessment online. Us being a WIDA state, we use the WIDA screener as our tool for identification, and the WIDA remote screener has been developed to help you accomplish this and meet this requirement for identification. A few notes. This remote screener is a temporary solution that is in place in response to the challenges that COVID-19 poses. It's paper-based. They built it very quickly, but it is intended to uphold equity for all students, regardless of their access to technology. Materials, we're going to go deeper into this, that there's a test administrator manual, a test administrator script, materials for the student, and a training video showing example test administration, and a very, the website for Remote Screener has extensive support there as well. In the training that WIDA provided Tuesday, there was very positive feedback about the training video. That was very helpful to see how the test is actually administered. There are two phases. The K1 remote screener materials and webinar are already available in the secure portal. Grades 2 through 12 materials are coming in early August, and we'll talk more about that as we go along as well.
And Michelle, I'm sorry to interrupt. We just got notification yesterday that it's actually going to, now they've confirmed 2 through 12 will be available on the 30th of this month, sooner than.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. Great. So I'm going to be saying this a lot. This is a provisional tool. It identifies students for a provisional status as EL, as recommended by the EL fact sheet. The full screener must be given when the student returns to make the final determination if the student qualifies for EL services. There are several reasons why this is provisional. It does not measure writing. We'll talk more about that. Because of the challenges of getting a student writing sample back from the student, writing is not assessed in this screener. It is not intended to replace the KWAPT or the WIDA screener. It's a very brief sample of student language. For example, the K1 screener has 2 prompts. It's a very brief sample of student language, and so does not really give the depth and the breadth of information as face-to-face screener. Brief assessments have a greater chance for error, for false positives or false negatives. So this is why it's really important that students take the full screener once they are able to. The purpose and use for remote screener is to say, yes, this student may qualify for EL services, and we should be providing those in a distance learning space if needed, or if a student is able to demonstrate language comparable to monolingual peers, then no, they don't. So it's just kind of a yes/no tool, and to help you. And I would encourage you to default on the side of caution to provide services if there's any kind of indication that the student might need language services. So a little bit more about this provisional identification. It's so that EL students can have those services start as quickly as possible. And the EL fact sheet specifically allows states to apply a temporary entrance procedure. That's the purpose of this tool. That permits the presumption of EL identification, but relies on appropriate follow-up. That appropriate follow-up is administration of the full screener when it's available, when you're able to get face-to-face with the student. The materials for this are in the secure portal. In the same place where you see the WIDA Screener Online and the WIDA Screener Paper materials and training, there is now a new button for WIDA Remote Screener. That will take you to this page. This is just the top portion. There is a lot of content below. The K1 administration training video is available, and the K1 webinar has already been posted to the website. So you can go and watch the webinar that was done on July 21st. They have an extensive question and answer session with folks that were on that webinar, and I would recommend certainly visiting that, because I'm not going to go as in depth as that webinar did. So for today, I really wanted to focus on helping you plan for your LEA should you need remote screener. Two big ideas: review the test administrator manual and then develop your plan. There are a lot of moving parts to remote screeners, so consistent guidance and things I think are important, but reviewing the test administrator manual from first will help you develop that plan. So the remote screener is split up by grade bands. As I mentioned, kindergarten is currently available. July 30th, grades 2 through 12 will be available. And so what are the considerations that you need to think about as you're developing your plan? You need to think about providing materials. Remote screener was designed that the students would have the student packet, the printed materials in hand. We're going to talk about possible other scenarios as on, but know that it was designed, for students to have those materials in front of them. So if possible, that should be a high priority, to provide the student packet to the student. So you'll need to schedule times. For students in grades K through 5, it's recommended that a responsible adult is present with the student. The adult just listens, but it is recommended from WIDA that an adult be present. You also should think about checking your equipment. If a cell phone or a video call, or if you set up something like Zoom, make sure that that technology is working for the student and for the test administrator. If video call is not an option, then an interpreter may be helpful because there's a portion where you need to, introduce yourself to the parent, and if that parent doesn't speak English, an interpreter is one way that you can communicate with the family. So for both K-1 and 2 through 12, they recommend scheduling 30 minutes per student. And that includes the introduction, the getting comfortable, administering the items, and then closing the interview. For grades K1, speaking, is the primary mode of domain tested. It's an oral interview protocol, and the scoring form gives you an EL status recommendation. For 2 through 12, the difference is that there is speaking and reading. 6 items that the student reads aloud. So there's the oral portion as well as reading. And again, the outcome will be a recommendation for EL status. So Remote Screener does not have its own certification. So who should administer the test? It's highly recommended, and this was very well emphasized in the webinar, that an experienced WIDA certified test administrator is recommended. It would be very difficult for somebody to go in cold without experience with things like scoring speaking. If you're familiar with scoring speaking in the WIDA screener, you know, that needs to be done kind of on the fly. The test administrator needs to be pretty adept with or familiar with the other their Access or WIDA screener. So while your test administrators do not need to get certified for Remote Screener, it's recommended that they be certified for Access or for regular screener. Technology needed, at a minimum, you need a telephone. It can be done without video. It's recommended that the student have a cell phone or some kind of video call. This just sort of says the same thing that a smartphone is okay. Desktop, laptop, tablet, platforms such as Skype, FaceTime, or Zoom work as well. Again, a video call is recommended for several reasons. It's easier to communicate with the student if they can see your face, including nonverbal communication. You can read their nonverbal signals as well as they can see you. If you're using a cell phone, if the test administrator is using a cell phone, you as a district should determine what cell phone test administrator should use. It's, you know, are people concerned about using their personal cell phones? Can the district provide a cell phone? Those are some of the questions you'll want to think through. Other ideas please put these in the chat. If you don't have WebEx or Zoom, or what are other platforms? Some that were mentioned were Google Hangouts, WeChat, Microsoft Teams. You as a district can determine what platform is appropriate for making these video calls. And I mentioned before, if you're using a landline, consider the need for an interpreter. There's more detail in that regard in the test administration manual. So in preparation for test administrators, you want to print and read the TAM, watch the test administration video. They'll want to find a quiet, well-lit space, test that video platform, and print the student scoring sheet and test administrator script. That's what the test administrator is going to need in hand. So what do you need to print? That test administration manual, the test administrator script, the student packet that will go to the student, and the student score sheet. You'll also need to print the speaking rubric because you're going to refer to this rubric. What we're looking at here is the kindergarten speaking rubric. It's the same for first grade, but that speaking rubric will really help the test administrator evaluate the student's responses holistically. that you're really looking for a holistic idea of where the student's language ability lies. So this is just a shot of a view of what the test administrator script looks like. The test administrator is going to say what is in bold. There are things in italics that are suggestions, but shouldn't be read aloud. The bold text is what the test administrator reads aloud to the student. So, introduction, making the student comfortable. Hi, what's your name? How are you? And then some suggestions are verifying that the student is looking at the correct picture. And then in gray, there are expected responses to the question. So that's what the test administrator side looks like. What the student will see is the student packet. As I mentioned, the K1 screener has only 2 pages. I think there are more than 1 prompts per page, but it's just a 2-page set of materials that the student should have in front of them. They recommend printing it in color, but it's okay to print in grayscale if that is if color is prohibitive for your district. So what domains are assessed? As I mentioned, K1, it directly assesses speaking and indirectly assesses listening. Reading and writing are not assessed for K1. Throughout all grades, listening is assessed indirectly. The test administrator really needs to be mindful of paying attention to what the student's listening proficiency might be. For 2 through 12, speaking and reading are directly assessed. Writing is not assessed for those grade bands. So a little bit more about student materials. They do not need to be returned. At the end of the call, the test administrator can just tell the student that they can throw them away. They don't need to be returned to the district. So a common question that came up in the training was, do the documents need to be sent home, or can you show the images in Zoom or the video platform? So this takes some really careful thought and consideration, which is why I want to spend some time here. WIDA designed the remote screener so that the student has the picture or the reading prompt in front of them. It's designed for when you cannot be in the same physical space. Having the physical copy will likely elicit a more complex response. But consider the device the student is using. If they have a large screen, such as they're working on an iPad or a Chromebook or a computer, it may be possible to present the stimulus item, meaning the picture or the text, through screen share like we're doing now. But if they are using a cell phone, it might be too small for them to see the detail in the photo. I mean, it's going to ask questions, sample questions from K1 screener like, I see a window in the picture, what do you see? And if that image is too small for them to see the detail, that's going to be a real challenge for them. And especially for the older grades where there are those reading prompts, the text may be too small for them if the student only has access to a cell phone. Even if you're using Zoom, but on the student's end, they're using like the Zoom app on their phone, it may not be appropriate to show them the item on the video platform. So it really needs to be well thought through, and before you consider, oh, we're just going to all do this virtually and not worry about distributing student materials. It is, again, it was designed to have that the student has their student packet in front of them tangibly, and they're able to have it physically. So after the interview, there is the score sheet, and this documents the interview. You mark down the date, the test administrator, the student's name, date of birth, those sorts of things, and then it has a nice space, I think, to enter student strengths. What strengths did you observe that the student demonstrated? And then any additional test observations. This might be like the student seemed distracted, or whatever might be helpful in documenting. And then you check one of 3 boxes, that the student is clearly a newcomer or a beginner, and identified as an English learner in this provisional form. That might be levels 1 and 2 in WIDA. The student demonstrated a level of English proficiency, but not in a way that clearly supports an identification decision. Additional in-person screening is necessary to determine the English learner status. That might be thinking around like levels 3 and 4. But if the student is clearly able to demonstrate fluent or highly proficient language equivalent to a monolingual English-speaking peer, then you can check that 3rd box that they do not require these provisional services. I do want to add a thought here about some questions that we've received about documenting this. This form does download as a fillable PDF. So you can keep it as an electronic version. You'll want to keep a very clear record of which students were given remote screener and need to be given the full screener when they return to school. This also serves as documentation for that you want to keep in the student's EL folder or in their CUME file. However, you would typically document a screener, you want to probably keep this in the same way, in the same form, so that it is there as part of the student's history. So making a determination, and again, this is really intended to make just a yes or no determination. Test administrators are the decision maker. They're going to be making on-the-spot decisions about students after a very short test. That's why that experience with access or screener is really important. Again, highlighting this is a provisional identification. An official screener will need to be administered once it's possible. What does it report? As you can see from the form we just looked at, it does not provide a scale score or proficiency level. You're just choosing one of these 3 options. Beginner, intermediate, yes, these two groups or require language support in this provisional form, or no, the student does not. They are clearly able to demonstrate language proficiency in English. So for professional learning, for K1, there's that video of online test administration. It's a little video with a little girl named Clara. Again, that was mentioned as very helpful in providing support to test administrators. The live webinar was on Tuesday. It's already archived in the remote screener button, so you can watch it there. It includes QA from the field and point to additional resources and training. The webinar for grades 2 through 12 will be August 6th. So the materials will be available on July 30th, but there will be another webinar held on August 6th. And we will share out the details and connection information for that with you. Similarly, it will include Q&A from the field. It will be posted in the secure portal if you aren't able to attend at that time, and provide additional resources where you can find more resources and training. All right, so that brings me to the end of the overview of what Remote Screener is and what it looks like, its uses and purpose. Megan, would you like to speak to questions? Hey.
Yes. Okay, so there's two questions that definitely need to be discussed. So the first one being from Preston Clark. Thank you for bringing this question to us. Is the remote screener adequate to determine whether a student should take, oh, sorry, that one was from Amy. I jumped too far. If it's clear from the remote screener that they are fluent English speakers, do we still need to use the full screener tool when possible? If you did not get a chance to see my response in the chat, the answer is yes. This is just provisional. So you do, when you get that opportunity, when it is possible, you do still need to administer the formal screener or the formal KWAPT if that student is a kinder student. What would you like to add, Anne Michelle?
That again, this is a very brief example of student language. And while for K1, you're really looking at oral language, that you really want to assess that writing piece to make the final determination for older students later on. You know, the 3 to 5 questions that are included in remote screener are not sufficient to make the final determination. So the student must be given the full screener when they return, even if it's just a formality. You want to really follow the process that is required. One thing that was mentioned that I thought was a great idea was when you have to administer the remote screener, the regular screener when the student returns. If you're familiar with screener, sometimes there's pointing and gestures that are part of that. And they recommended, you could project screener onto a whiteboard, and the test administrator could, then be safely socially distanced from the student, and the student could interact with what they're seeing on the whiteboard. Just one suggestion.
Thank you. Okay, and the next step being, once we have this provisional status, are they expected to note the status in Aspire or whatever their SIS system is? And if so, how?
I would say that is up to the district, how you would like to document it. It's not required. We won't be collecting this information. We will collect the EL identification once they have taken the full screener. However, it is helpful for you though to document the students who took remote screener and need to be given full screener. If your SIS system helps with that. But I don't believe there's anywhere in AMS for this to be recorded. It's just on that score sheet. That's part of the materials.
You are correct. There is not anywhere in AMS to record this. So again, to reiterate what Anne Michelle just said, you get to choose if you want to mark the students in Aspire. And since this screener does not give you a proficiency level, you can choose which level. I tend to say go with a default level for the moment, and err, like Anne Michelle said, err on the side of safety. Give them a default, knowing that these are students that we are going to have to go back and formally screen. And then really quickly before we get to Amy's questions, Beverly, I wanted to invite you to come off of mute really quickly to just make sure that we have answered your question where you saw some contradictory information.
Sure. Anne Marie, can you go back to the slide that had the yes, yes, no? And it could have just been me not paying attention, but yeah, okay. So it's important to remember, I see it's in yellow, but then the yes, yes, no is what confused me. Like, to me, it almost seemed as though those students did not need to take something. The clarification was great, and I totally understand that everyone takes it. But again, my question would also go to those students that are considered fluent or highly proficient for this very brief check. Will also not be, if they come back, we have to adjust scheduling and everything, which is great. But I'm curious about that 10-1 count, and to pick more R's question about does impacting Title III funding.
Okay, we will get to the Title III funding in just one moment, because I think Amy's question is going to then bleed into this, and I'll invite Christelle to also join in this question about Title III funding. But coming back up to Amy, thank you so much, Beverly, for your clarification. Amy asked, is the remote screener adequate to determine whether a student should take the WIDA access if we don't have the opportunity to administer the WIDA screener first? So in the situation that you find your school in a completely virtual remote learning situation and you can never administer an official screener, we've provisionally identified this student as qualifying for services. Does that then qualify them to take the WIDA access as well?
I would say yes. I would say, again, err on the side of caution that while this is a temporary and provisional status, if it's indicated that the student requires English language support, and the full screener you were never able to give it, I would say that yes, the student should still take WIDA access.
Thank you. And now let's get into the implications of Title III funding. And then also Beverly asked, and I'm not sure which one we want to address first. I'm thinking let's go with what Beverly asked first. Will students taking the remote screener be part of our 10-1 count? And Christelle, you might need to answer this one.
Yeah, so my question is, if you're talking about accountability measures in relationship to the N size of 10, if you're actually, if you've done the home language survey or you've done the remote screener and it's obvious that they need support, then the question is, you know, how is our data system going to code that so they can be considered as a part of the 10? The N size of 10 is really important for many reasons, as you know, not to mention that personalized learning related to the needs of individual students is the actual priority. And remember, to go back to what Darren said, this is a clear civil rights issue in relationship to equitable access to high quality instruction. So you just have to be clear about the kind of documentation of services that you provide for students based on even a provisional screener. So that's kind of my viewpoint.
It's not related to the N size of 10, 10-1 meaning October 1st, right? So typically we have to identify our ELs, and depending on how that's going to be in our information system, right? That 10-1 count is sort of, and it goes to the other question above about, you know, determining funding for the following year and things like that. So no, I took every student, whether there's 1 or 10 or 1,000, they all need that. They all need English language development, right? So that 10-1 was really about the October 1st count.
Well, I was actually on a task force in relationship to determining what student engagement looks like for enrollment and changing the board rule that is supposed to actually go to the board this afternoon. And there are several times, the October 1 is, you know, when the audit happens, but the way in which students are counted related to student engagement is actually being discussed and possibly changed by the board this afternoon, which I think probably most of us on this call or on this WebEx would probably want to tune in for. The October 1 count ends up being problematic because of the way in which funding, as you commented, is being currently determined based on, you know, not the conditions of the pandemic. And so they're actually trying to change the way in which that board rule is connected to funding, the 990, as well as the way in which student enrollment is counted for funding. So I don't know if that helps, and I don't even know if most people understand that the board rule is going to be changed this afternoon. So it'd be important that you get on to that meeting. Is that helpful, Beverly?
Yes, she says yes in the chat. So, and then that leads to, I believe it's Rhonda's question. How will all of this affect our title funds if we don't mark them in Aspire or in their SIS system?
Okay, so this actually goes back to the same idea of the ADM measurement and how do you actually account for students enrolled when they're online and they're not checked in. So all these decisions have not been made because the board rule hasn't been changed. As soon as the board rule is changed, and there's a variety, I actually looked at the revisions of the board rule, and it has lots of options for actually accounting for the number of students who are English learners that are enrolled. So again, I can't really respond to this until this afternoon when the discussion happens around how we're determining average daily measurement for students. So sorry about that, Rhonda, but this is a pretty critical issue. As far as the feds are concerned, they've added another 50 million onto Title III. We sent out all your budgets early because we wanted you to have additional time to really think about how you're using your funds to support students. The immigrant funding, which is interesting because we couldn't actually do that because of your point related to an average of increased immigrant students based on the federal definition, And so Aaron can't even give us that data until the middle of August. So people districts previously who have been identified as eligible for immigrant funding, we won't even know that probably until the end of August. So Rhonda, let me know if that in any way helps you understand kind of the dilemma that we're in.
It looks like she's saying thanks. We will check the board rules after this afternoon. And so, yeah, it seems that we are going to have to wait a little bit more on clarification of all of this. But it'll just give us another excuse to all come together virtually again. So I want to give one more opportunity for any chat questions.
So let me say that in the chat function, I'm going to put links. One link is to different indicators and 21 instruments for measuring student engagement that I actually provided for the committee that's presenting to the board this afternoon. I'm hoping they'll consider the research related to these 21 different measurements. And then I'm also going to put a link in the chat that will go directly to a brand new professional learning Tier 3 website that has a catalog of all the online courses that we're providing to actually mitigate the undue stress for professional learning and paying fees for courses. So I'll put those links in there.
Thank you, Christelle. We did get another question pop up in the chat. And oh boy, this is a good one, Melinda. She says, I know we're crossing our fingers that this will all be over soon, but hopefully before the next WIDA access testing window comes upon us. However, if this mess is not over and we do not find ourselves in school, can students take the WIDA access test remotely? And right now, the answer to that is to be determined. We're going to have to wait and see. WIDA is incredible. The fact that they came out with this remote screener in a matter of weeks to allow you this capability is truly a remarkable feat, as Anne Michelle said earlier. So I think if any institution could make it happen, I feel like WIDA would, but it's just too soon to tell. Anne Michelle and I partake in WIDA meetings and subcommittees regularly, and we have not even heard mention of this yet. But as soon as our current situation keeps evolving and we get more information, we will make sure that you are in the know. Anne Michelle, do you want to add anything to that question?
Yeah, okay. In the conversations that I've had, it's really thinking about the psychometric validity of administering something like WIDA access remotely. But how does it change the construct measurement? How does it change the students' depth of responses? These are all really, really important questions that WIDA needs to consider before they say, yeah, go ahead and administer access remotely. We will work hard to provide clear guidance for you. Whether it's, if there is no remote access administration option, guidance to, bring in students on a schedule, so that they can take the assessment safely. We'll provide whatever guidance we can for you. But creating access in a remote format is much, much more difficult than this brief paper-based instrument for just determining that provisional EL status.
Thanks, Michelle. And then going back to Christelle, putting the links in the playlist, we have a lot of people on that are just phone, so they may not have access to these links. And I believe Christelle is going to get all of these extra resources and links added to the playlist. Am I correct in that assumption, Christelle?
Yes, we'll send it out in an email. And the other thing, if you actually go to the title, just put title USBE Title III, because the website has been redone with all kinds of resources for remote learning, and the actual place where all the coursework is now available under the professional learning link. So if you just put USBE Title III and go to the web page, and you'll see all the change in the website.
Perfect.
Okay, and also it's not relicensure hours. Okay, so it's actually USBE credit, and it's 3 credit. The reason is that it's not relicensure points is because many districts actually use USBE Midas credits, not relicensure points, to support salary and lane change. And so all those courses are actually 12 weeks that actually match the 3.0 credit criteria in relationship to either an ESL endorsement or, other opportunities for lane change. So it's not relicensure hours.
And actually, as I am learning more about our new licensing rollover, I was just told by our new coordinator over licensing yesterday that when you are awarded USBE credit, it now falls back to your administrator, your LEA, that gets to designate the amount of renewal hours, they're calling them, the same as relicensure points, how much a credit will actually be worth. So bringing those decisions back to a local level for you all. So I'll have Anne Michelle go back to, or go to our next slide with our contact information. Even though we are all remote, we are still readily available for you all. So again, please do not hesitate to contact us at any time. We will stay on for a few more minutes just in case any other questions pop up. But thank you for your time today. And Christelle and Anne Michelle, I will let you close us out.
I'll just say thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do and the work that you're doing to support our English learner students.
So I'll just do the concluding kind of hoopla, which is saying, that in the situation that we're in and the conditions of our children, their anxiety for their family and their community, and the work that we do is so critical. And to be committed as an educator is creating a future that we all will love for our children. And it's not to say that the work that you do, even though it might not be acknowledged, is really the most important for not just Utah, but for creating an approach to loving children, their communities, and their families in a way that makes a difference for the kind of future that they're going to have. So thank you so much, and with great love and respect. Make sure you stay healthy and be careful.